Hi everyone, welcome. I just bought these two worm bins out here to the bench. These are the original red wiggler worms. To give them their next feeding, feeding number 22 over their 248 days in service, and this feeding is going to be very similar to all the other 21 feedings that they've received over their time in service here, with the exception of one thing. Now that last week we decided we're going to begin the foraging phase of these systems. That means we will give them food, but no bedding. It's foraging with the purpose of knocking out any residual bedding that might still be remaining in this material. And since we knew we were going to be withholding bedding in the future, we were pretty generous about giving them a really nice portion of it last time. And I guess I was sort of debating in my mind how to handle that material, since it's the last of the bedding that they're going to be getting. And I mean, for that matter, the feeding zone indicators that we laid out here, these coffee filters to show us where we last fed, we've got replacements, as you saw. So the fact that these are getting a little bit tattered down here in the worm bins is okay, because we're going to swap them out with replacements. So these are the little exceptions that I allow, is saying, okay, if the foraging phase includes no new bedding, then why would I be still adding a bedding-like material? Well, just because. Alright, high degree of moisture for sure, and I could tell that already, even before removing the covers, just because of the weight of the systems. Quite heavy. So, what to do with the bedding that we provided last time? The idea here was to either keep it isolated to the feeding zone and not move it about throughout the system, or don't worry so much about it and possibly take a little time to even help blend it in throughout the system, just so there's bedding everywhere for the worms to be working on, all over the place, not just where it was placed during the last check-in. I guess I'm starting to lean towards the idea of just mixing it in throughout. I've encountered a few things here, such as the half of a mango seed, and it's hollow. There's nothing in there. It's been cleaned out. Luckily, the worms are still interested enough in that object that they keep returning to it and using it as a little kind of hidey hole clubhouse. So it's always loaded with castings, even though I'll try to empty it if I encounter one. The other evident leftover, if you want to call it that, from the last feeding is the moisture too. Although it might not be specific to the feeding zones, perhaps it's just as damp everywhere. It's my guess that that's the case. When I reviewed the video from our last check-in with these little guys, I even questioned whether I might want to come back on here with covers slightly pulled in from the edges to allow for a little bit of evaporation and drying. The other option would be to put the covers right back on the way we found them, which was quite thorough, to let the system hang on to its moisture, since the moisture level being high would definitely contribute to a faster process where the worms can do their thing in a more damp environment, versus needing to avoid sections of material that are becoming a little too dry for them to inhabit. I think I'm leaning towards checking out the entire rest of the system too here, tilling things around. This looks like the other half of the mango seed husk, where it's only a part of it anymore, like part of it has fallen off. Because it almost does seem like aerating would be to some degree beneficial, just in case there might be, this is another piece of the same stuff, just in case there's little pockets of kind of anaerobic activity that might want to start blooming in here. I wouldn't want to allow that to happen, so a little tilling up and stirring of the material around probably doesn't hurt. So the leftovers, there's a pair which was part of the last feeding. Same story here, same pair, same type of color and everything, same amount of material left over roughly. But check this out. I would almost say that what remains here is already, as far as the degrade of this thing even seems like it's already smaller than this thing, which is about a month and a half old apple. And it's so good to finally see some worms taking some interest in this apple. I mean, after a month and a half, how long do we need to keep visiting this leftover and see it finally eaten? Come on, worms, get on the ball. Eat this thing already. As you can see, I do take care to keep things pretty synchronized, pretty consistent between the systems here. So I mean, even though they're separate containers, it's going to be a pear, a pumpkin stem, mango seed husk. It's just this apple. This apple that just doesn't want to go bye-bye. And I suppose I could probably help it along and just crush it and smear it and expand its surface area a little bit, but it's becoming kind of an interesting thing to want to follow. So I'm leaving it be and see what happens. So as far as all that nice bedding material that we unearthed from the feeding zone, well, it's not going to be a priority for me to bring it back in. However, I could see sort of repurposing our old feeding zone indicators to become replacement. Now that they've got replacements, repurposing them to become actually bedding down in the feeding zone, and it's going to be very limited anymore as far as how much of that sort of stuff they even keep getting anymore. There's no guarantee that the next feeding will include replacements again. So just noticing there's a sticker on this banana peel over here. A lot of people just allow for that stuff to go right in with their feedings into their worm bins. My tendency is usually to want to exclude them from the get-go. But yeah, this is a nice environment, I think. It feels a little bit high on the moisture side, and I would hate to see anything start getting muddy or clumped together and nasty. So I'm only going to maintain this high moisture level, I think, while I can still clearly see a good bit of bedding mixed right into the material everywhere, you know? Because then I don't feel like there's a likelihood of things clumping and getting stuck together. At that point, it seems like there's always going to still be material in between pockets of castings that would serve as sort of a, I don't know, something to prevent clumping, an anti-clumping agent, if you will. A little piece of tomato. You saw strawberry bits, a couple banana peels, obviously, making its way into each system. So I could tell already it seemed like it was going to be a pretty good size feeding just based on the amount of space that this stuff took up in the plastic transport container that I bought this stuff down in. However, it was mostly air, just from all these banana peels kind of piled in on top of each other. I could tell right away from its weight that it wasn't all that heavy. So before we cover up this feeding zone and stir everything around, aerate stuff, I sprinkled in a little bit of this crushed eggshell, and then on top of it I'm also including a little bit of my worm chow. And that's our feeding. The feeding zone indicator will reposition back on top here to show ourselves where we last fed after we give the whole system a nice stir around. And you know, now that I'm really reaching down deep into the material furthest away from where we last fed, where there really wasn't much bedding anymore in the material, it definitely feels like it has a far greater likelihood of getting muddy and clumped together and nasty. So I do believe that when it comes time to return our plastic covers, I'm going to do so in such a way that I allow the systems to breathe a bit and allow some of their moisture content to evaporate away out on the edges. So yeah, it's a little surprising. I don't think it was quite that damp yet last time, but we did deliberately cover thoroughly and, you know, not allow for any possible drying to occur. But I think we're going to have to make that change at this point. And there's certainly enough moisture in here that we don't need to worry. All right, at this point I'm sort of in a analysis mode here. Every now and then I go quiet, and it's because my little hamster in the wheel is starting to run a little bit faster up in my brain, trying to sense, compare whether we've got one system that's a little more damp than the other. It almost seems like the sense of hearing is the one that's telling me that maybe this one was a little bit more damp, just based on the squishiness sound that I kept hearing from moving my hands through that stuff. As far as its consistency and the way it feels in my hands, though, it's not all that different. But I would definitely say that moisture in both systems is really nice and high, probably nice and cozy from the perspective of the wormies. And the question is there a balance between keeping it that way for their sake and for their ongoing productivity and efficiency? I say yes, but do we also try to do ourselves a favor and not let this stuff become nasty, which is a situation that's tough to recover from? I would definitely say yes as well. So I believe the happy medium is going to be something I've done here and there on a few occasions, and I'm going to do it again, which is to cover up in such a way that where the feeding zone was and the majority of the system in general is well covered, to allow its moisture content to remain relatively unchanged. But in certain spots, we're going to allow for a little drying to start occurring, and over time we'll definitely want to see much smoother flowing, less clumpy material. But for now, I think it's to the system's benefit to maintain high moisture and to enable the worms to really polish off the remaining bits of bedding scattered throughout these systems now that they're foraging. So that's it for our check-in with the 248-day original red wiggler worms getting feeding number 22 after a 12-day pause since their last check-in. I don't even know if I shared any statistics with you guys about these systems yet, but that was that. And we're done with the check-in. So I got a couple things I got to take care of getting cleaned up, put away, but I'm not going to waste your time with that. Really quick, before I go really quick, let me just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. If you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.